name's Ben Tice, owner and director of Skol Marketing. We help small to medium-sized businesses get online with web development and design services, and then help them enhance their online presence with digital marketing services like SEO, SEM, social media. But my favorite part of my job is partnering with great organizations like Score to bring you guys these different types of topics and updates so you guys can learn not only what's kind of changing and updating, but also how to implement these things on your guys' end. So today we're going to be talking about kind of one of the newest kind of platforms, so to speak, or like things you might be hearing about is Google Analytics 4.0. This is a, again, newer Google Analytics system, operation, everything like that Google is pushing, and we'll, again, be kind of dissecting that and at least giving you guys a preview of it, kind of a more 1.0 kind of introduction to Google Analytics 4.0 today. Okay. So today, again, we're going to be talking about understanding and really the basics to Google Analytics 4.0. And so Google Analytics 4.0 is going to be kind of Google's newest version of Google Analytics. So Google Analytics has been around really, again, for a long time, 15 plus, again, years here. And so we've got really kind of a new version of it. And we've always had different types of versions out there. And, obviously we're at 4.0, so there's been previous versions. But I will say this is probably one of the most, the biggest changes or updates that we've seen on a Google platform before, not only from a user experience, but how it operates and things like that. So today what we're going to do is we're going to kind of go into a little bit of what is Google Analytics 4.0. How is it different than really kind of 3.0, which is actually called Universal Google Analytics, and kind of, again, start to give you guys an idea of what's new, navigating analytics, and then kind of strategy all the way around that. So what is Google Analytics 4.0? Like I was kind of talking about, is it's really Google's new analytics kind of version. And so technically right now, there are two versions of analytics you can be running, and you can actually be running them simultaneously. And so we have Universal Analytics, which is essentially was Google Analytics 3.0. This is the one that, again, if you've been using analytics for the past how many years, this is the kind of model that you've been using, again, Google Analytics Universal. The new one is called 4.0. Like, for instance, if you've just recently signed up for Google Analytics, most likely they're actually pushing you already into 4.0. It's really kind of the default version now. And so really, both versions are going to be tracking systems on the site that we're going to be tracking every, again, all the good stuff that we're used to. So if it's Universal 4.0, we're still talking about, tracking different users, their behavior, their demographics, the pages, the conversions, all of that kind of fun stuff. Really what's kind of changing here, and I'll get into this a little bit, is how it's being tracked and then how it's kind of being displayed and how we interact as, again, business owners or as Google Analytics managers to the actual kind of platform. The one biggest thing that 4.0 really did is, Google Analytics really kind of stripped away all of their analytics and kind of decided, hey, let's kind of rebuild it. Really what they did is they rebuilt it with kind of conversion and return on investment heavy focus. What that means is the entire platform is built around showing you kind of conversions as well as the value of those kind of conversions. And it's not that you couldn't get those in Universal, but, again, in classic kind of Google Analytics fashion and versions, it was more or less, again, just another kind of tool or another report to kind of look at. Again, here it's all about kind of conversions. I kind of mentioned this at the beginning, but I will say for right now, you should most likely have both. And so, again, it is important to know that Google has recently just announced, though, that come next year, summer of next year in 2023, they are saying that everyone needs to be moved off of Universal. Now, again, I will say Google has already moved this date a couple times, so who knows? But it is important, no matter even if they push it again, it is one of those things that it is coming, and this is going to be the new frontier of Google Analytics and how it's going to kind of run. But what is nice is that, again, you can not only just have both versions, you can have both versions right now running simultaneously, and it's actually recommended. The reason I say it's recommended is that you can start to get familiar with 4.0 while 3.0 or Universal is still on there. We honestly don't always get that luxury with Google or even just technology in general. A lot of times, as I'm sure we've all kind of experienced, sometimes there's a drop dead date and it comes a lot sooner than we think. And we've got to make the switch. And it's kind of, again, tough luck if we don't like it. And we've kind of got to learn a new system on the run. That's what's kind of nice about here. And this is what I would kind of recommend. So the one thing to kind of understand too is that, again, not only can you have both versions, but most of you guys might be out there saying, hey, Ben, well, I've had Google Analytics for 3, 5, 10 years. How do I essentially get 4.0? And really, it's just a matter of going into your, again, admin section and being able to kind of add that. Oh, sorry about that. So you can just go into your admin section and you can even Google this, how to set up, again, 4.0. Again, I don't want to spend a ton of time on just how to set it up, because honestly, it is very simple. If you go into your admin section and you're able just to simply kind of, follow kind of the step-by-steps, you can really just spin up a 4.0 account in a matter of 60 seconds. And then you're going to have two right by each other and you can switch actually between them. That's another kind of key thing. On your same login, on your same account, you're able to kind of switch between them. So you can just kind of flip back and forth, compare some of the data, again, get familiar, see where things are being mapped out. Another big thing that we're kind of seeing with 4.0 is it's more of a holistic approach to analytics, kind of the end-to-end journey. And what that means is we're kind of seeing, again, Google, again, with tearing it down and trying to more or less kind of tell a story, if you will, of, okay, when someone got here, how was the journey until they got to that conversion? Again, these are still things that you can see on Universal, but they're very much, Universal is set up that it's report, 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 and you have to kind of tell, and you have to pull the right reports for the right story. Here, Google's trying to help us more and give us a little bit more guidance on a lot of reports that people want and people kind of appreciate. That's kind of what we're seeing here. Another thing and another kind of keyword that you might, again, hear about is called cohorts. So cohorts are kind of a group of users with a common kind of characteristic or underlying, again, essentially a characteristic like an event or in a conversion. And so really what we're kind of seeing here is that you can create a cohort report to see how long it takes people to convert based on a specific marketing tactic. So I'm just saying, like, this word wasn't really utilized in Google Analytics Universal, but really what we're kind of seeing now is we're almost grouping different types of people on 4.0, and we're calling them essentially, again, cohorts. And that's, again, if there's that defining characteristic of, again, how they came to that conversion. Did they come to the site, again, on the same day? And so, really at the end of the day, what that means for you is that we can really kind of do reports off of different marketing kind of tactics a little bit more differently than we have, again, before. And that's what you're going to kind of see is not that Google is assuming, but they know from past experiences that we want to label things differently. We want to see things differently. At the end of the day, a lot of us as business owners or marketing managers are probably going to say, yeah, at the end of the day, I just want to know where people kind of came from and then who converted so I can apply that back to marketing techniques and figure out my ROI. That's what 4.0 is essentially trying to do and make it a little bit easier. So here's kind of the differences between Universal and 4.0 is one of them is measuring users and how they do that. So the first is, and you can kind of see this little chart on the right-hand side to kind of walk you through it a little bit. But when we're measuring users, Universals was more of a session-based data model. What that meant is when someone came in, anytime someone came to your site, that was called a session. And really, analytics was really, session focused. Once they get into the site, that's how we kind of want to go. 4.0 is going to be a little bit more kind of event-based or conversion-based. Again, really from there is, okay, let's just not focus when they got to the site. Let's focus a little bit more what they're doing and kind of the journey to get them to actually report what was happening kind of on the site. So that's where we kind of see session-based versus, again, kind of event-based, again, with that of how that's going to be kind of different. Another really big one, actually going back to the first bullet point, is going to be kind of the cookies. I'm sure we're all familiar with the, install this tracking code. And then we've got kind of, a cookie is really, when someone comes into the site, a cookie is that thing that kind of attaches to your session or your browser. That's why Google Analytics Universal was very session based. And, again, it was able to kind of track you. Believe it or not, now it's kind of changing there. It's not really via done cookies. There's more or less, it's less coding now being able to be done with better technology. They're now not having to need cookies, not needing to actually have some of those, previous types of code on the site to actually be able to track people. So that's where we're actually kind of seeing, again, some of the differences there. And that's a huge one. This, again, where you're probably going to see one of the biggest differences here is that, again, second from the bottom, codeless event tracking. This is probably one of my favorite things about 4.0. Really, if you remember, if you guys have taken some of my courses for, again, just analytics in general, if you've experienced this, you can do event-based tracking, which is kind of like, like a single click. Someone downloads a PDF, someone watches something on your site, someone, again, clicks to your sister's site. Very kind of simple kind of conversions, if you will. It's not necessarily filling out a contact form, but what we've got now here is codeless event tracking. So Google will automatically track some of these things that it thinks is important. Like for instance, it'll even track how many people are scrolling through your website. So if you've got a website that's maybe pretty long, it can actually track automatically how, again, many people are kind of scrolling. Again, how many people downloaded a PDF? How many people click certain these buttons? It's using more of an AI. That's also going to be really an underlying feature here of 4.0 is we're kind of using AI to really kind of learn you and understand from a business perspective what is going to be important and how then Google displays that to you. And so also 4.0 is really, again, powerful for apps. So again, if you have your own, again, if you've developed apps, if you have your own business app, this is very important. If not, again, still a website is still very important as well. And the last one that is a really big difference over Universal is 4.0. Not only is it very conversion based, not only is it not using necessary cookies, not only is it using codeless event tracking, we're also getting a lot more cross-device tracking. And this is becoming super popular, as you guys can imagine, as, again, I pick up a phone and then decide to go to my computer, then go back to my phone and then go to my tablet. That is going to be super, super critical, not only to your marketing efforts, but also to your marketing reporting. And then also following some of those, again, users around and being able to understand, again, if we go back to that slide ago, that end-to-end journey. Again, how do we get someone there and how do we actually see that journey, again, see it through. So these are going to be the main differences that you're going to see on, again, 4.0 that you maybe don't see on Universal. So, again, we kind of talked about this. I'm just going to kind of go through this. This is in your admin section. Again, it's recommended that we set up both. If you already have, again, Universal, we can just upgrade to another property. If you're starting fresh, I really encourage you to kind of create both, even though Google doesn't necessarily want you to do that because they just want you to be using 4.0. It's just realizing, especially, here's the one thing, the little trick right now too is, especially if you have like those DIY builders, like your Weebly, your Wix, your Squarespace, they're still built for kind of Google Analytics Universal. So it's just a little bit matter of kind of getting us over, and honestly, my opinion of part of why Google even pushed it is to allow other third-party softwares to kind of catch up to 4.0 and understand how they're kind of changing internally too. The reason I mentioned that too is that's why I encourage you to kind of do both, so that you can still do the classic, or if you're a website builder, or if you're kind of confused in there, and for instance, there's not a ton of documentation on how to do the new one to your new site and stuff like that, just to make sure you don't get confused. That's why it's nice to kind of have both of those kind of set for you. And so here's a little bit, again, you're going to see some, familiarity to, Universal Analytics, but here is going to be a little bit of difference from the navigating the analytics and the reporting. So the bottom left, we still have the admin section. This is, again, the exact same as Universal. Number two, we actually have report snapshots. These are very similar to kind of like the collection of reports, but they are going to be, again, different types. Again, you're not going to see necessarily your acquisition or behavior. They're not displayed like that. Again, they're displayed a little bit more of, like, for instance, we go into life cycle and we see kind of that end-to-end journey. We go into the actual users, those different cohorts that we were kind of talking about. So you're just, you're approaching the data just from a different perspective. But then also number 3 is the date and share, which we kind of know, but a really kind of cool feature that I encourage you guys to kind of take advantage of. And you kind of see it a little bit. If you see, it looks like a little bit like a magic wand, or, again, kind of a magic graph. That's kind of the AI insights. These are really kind of cool. And this is where I encourage you to kind of spend some of your time as you get familiar with 4.0, because these are really kind of cool things that, if you've ever run ads on Google, it's similar to kind of Google ads, like their kind of AI kind of suggestion and their kind of wizard in a sense as well. They're analyzing your account and giving you recommendations. Again, every recommendation isn't exact, it's still a program, but it can be very helpful, especially as we're getting used to 4.0 and being able to give, again, instead of, learning it yourself, always relying on a marketing third party, we can actually kind of look at this and you can see all the different types of insights we can get. So we can get, again, just basic performance. So if we click on that, we can actually just see, Google will say, hey, this is what we're kind of seeing, and this is potentially what we kind of recommend, or also this is what that means. And so you can kind of see demographics, user acquisition, how we're kind of getting those people, traffic analysis, just looking at the traffic on your website, the different technology that people are utilizing, the phones, the computers, and seeing some insights there. And then also, if you're selling stuff on your site, absolutely e-commerce, and being able to tell you a little bit more in depth, or some nuggets of information that you can find with e-commerce. So this not only is super important to business owners as you're kind of doing this, but also marketing managers. And, if you're doing reports for your team and you're looking at this, these can be great insights to kind of put on those reports. So this, again, absolutely use, again, the AI insights. And again, just as a recap here, you can kind of see them in the upper right-hand corner in that red box. It's that little magic kind of graph. That's where you're going to kind of see those. So any report that you see on the screen, or at any point really, you're able to kind of access those AI insights. So here's just a couple reports that you're going to see kind of right away. So the first one is called lifecycle acquisition. So again, it's not going to be exactly like acquisition was in Universal, but it's going to be very similar to that. And we're going to be able to kind of get more from there. And I'll show you what that kind of means. So the first one is they break it down via just new users and sessions. So again, the amount of time someone's coming to your site, which is a session, and then the new people that are coming to your site. That's again what Google's saying, hey, this isn't super important stuff. These are new people to the site compared to the other people, like everybody that's kind of coming to the site. We also, of course, get our acquisition overview. This is very similar to Universal as well. Again, where people are coming from. Are they coming from a search engine, which is called organic? Are they coming from direct, which is typing in skolmarketing.com? Are they coming in from social media? Again, how did someone get to your site? That stuff is going to be there, but you'll notice a couple new graphs. Again, we're taking the same data. We're just trying to display it in a different way and give you a different perspective. And another one is called traffic acquisition. So this is, again, really kind of cool. And you can kind of see the drop down here where it says, for instance, first user source, first user campaign. These are opportunities to dive further into, okay, if someone came from, organic, if someone came from referral traffic, again, these are the cohorts. So we're able to kind of dive further into them and see different types of group of people. Again, it's just being able to analyze them differently and potentially be able to apply that to our marketing, again, efforts, our marketing ROI, and our marketing value there. Another one is called lifecycle engagement. This is definitely more of a newer report here. And this is one of those that it's kind of fun, again, kind of the codeless, again, event tracking, so to speak. So this is, you can kind of see on the right-hand side here is just some examples. Let's pick, again, number 5. We talked about that scroll. So we can actually kind of see an engagement overview and, again, really kind of see out of, you can kind of see really kind of the breakdown of, how many people are clicking and, the percentages up there, how many people are scrolling, how many people are logging into your, again, your site, how many people are downloading a file, how many people just looked at a page, all of these different types of things. And what's kind of nice is if you click on each one of those, you can actually go further in depth and actually get some more kind of information as well. So this is where, again, engagement is probably going to be, again, acquisition is great of where people are coming from, but engagement is probably one of the more, again, really kind of game changer reports that we're seeing with 4.0, because we're seeing in one place displayed, again, a lot differently than, universal, what people are doing from an event like a scroll or a click, conversions are, how people are contacting you, how people are purchasing items, how people are, again, signing up for a free demo. All of those types of things we're able to kind of see here, and it's just splitting it out more than we have seen previously into universal. Or what you'll sometimes kind of see with these reports too is you can still get some of this data in universal, but you have to essentially create a lot of those custom reports. And so you have to kind of know all the little intricacies of all the little filters and stuff like that. Here, Google is, again, kind of taking that and being able to display that differently for you so that you can kind of read that a little bit more easily. Another one, I've always loved retention. This, again, if you've ever played around with YouTube, you'll see this, again, value a lot. And again, retention, like for instance, for YouTube, we always talked about retention is, at the, when someone clicks, play on your video, 1 second in, we have 100% of people still watching it. But what happens 30 seconds in, 47 seconds in, what percentage of people are doing that? Here now, we're actually looking at retention for your actual website. So this is another really kind of cool, again, report to start to kind of apply not only to your website, but also kind of your marketing kind of needs. So we can kind of see, in the middle there, there's user retention by cohort. So we could click on that and actually be able to get more information, again, with those different kind of groups of users. Again, user engagement, user retention, all of these different kind of things. And what's really kind of nice is that we can click into these and get more information. Really what we're trying to see is, are we retaining the attention and engagement of people once they get into the site and once they start to go further into the site? That's ultimately what we're kind of looking at here. And one of the newer things that we're able to kind of get just at face value. You don't have to set this up. You don't have to do anything like that. It just comes, so to speak, out of the box, again, right there. And another kind of cool one too is, Google, the lifetime value, and I don't know if you guys can kind of see that's a little kind of smaller in the right-hand corner there, is they start to actually kind of apply a value to that. So you can start to kind of have some arbitrary values of when people are engaging or on your site, what that actually kind of means. Again, that end-to-end journey, that conversion, that high ROI focus. That's where all of these essentially are kind of coming from. Okay, and then another one is now some of the user reports, demographics. Again, you're going to see these, these are going to be very similar to what you're used to in universal analytics. But one of the biggest things too is making it a little bit easier to kind of search and sort the different demographics. That's one, again, complaint I've heard, or some kind of confusing things on universal, is when you get into some of the different demographics, if it's city, age, gender, you can kind of just see the list right there. It's kind of, they're different reports. You can't really compare them very easily to each other. Here, though, it's one search box and almost one filter, and we can start to kind of swap between those. So we can look at the city report where people, all the different cities people are viewing us from. Languages, age demographics, gender demographics, even interest, country, region. So again, it's just, this one more or less is kind of just, it's giving us a little bit more of a snapshot. You have more graphs to kind of look at, as well as it's just making it easier for us to access the data than it was kind of previously with universal analytics. But I will say that, your users by age, or users by, again, language, and there's little drop downs, you can change all those and all the graphs will kind of change. Again, all the data is essentially the same that you're used to in universal. Again, it's just being displayed differently via different graphs and kind of a unique kind of spin on it or take on it, more of a dashboard view. And then another one is tech reports. So this is going to be, again, kind of, again, very similar reports to universal. We have our browser reports, the different browsers people are using, the different devices, again, the different, the different phones, the different computers, the different tablets, and, again, also screen size, but this one has become even more prevalent than universal. And this is one that I encourage you guys to kind of pay attention to a little bit as well as, again, they'll actually show you the screen resolution. Because one thing that we're seeing is, of course, again, like we look at mobile devices, but mobile devices, again, like we can see a lot of variance, again, within the screen size, especially even look at computers. Again, some people like their computers, if you have a, Chromebook or whatever, that's almost the size of a tablet. Whereas some of these laptops now are the size of TVs. And so it's just sometimes important to kind of look at, on average, where some of your users and what screen size it is, and then just checking to make sure you're looking at those screen sizes to make sure that your call to actions, that your marketing, that your, again, just your marketing and images and overall layout of your site is going correctly and is, again, accurately applicable to that. We actually just, again, worked with a client that we were kind of, again, looking at this and realized two things. One is they were very concerned about, again, the way the website looked at a certain resolution, but we were able to look that it only affected less than 2% of people on the site. And again, not to say that those 2% of people shouldn't be accounted for, but when we looked at what it was going to take to kind of do that, and we actually are going to affect the 98%, it was able to kind of see that. Another client, we were able to actually kind of see that there was a, again, high, again, traffic on a certain device. And we were seeing that something was kind of being cut off. So there we were actually able to kind of change it and to be able to do it. So this is a report that you again, you could see in Universal, but you probably haven't had spent so much time on. More or less, we a lot of times see, and you've heard me even say one of my favorite reports is kind of the device or the technology report previously, where we got to see mobile, desktop, and tablet. And I really like that. But what screen resolution does for us, though, is even take that a step further, because again, like we're saying, a desktop can be a ton of sizes, a mobile site can be a ton, and it can allow you to kind of dig further into there. Also, if you do have apps, if you built an app and we kind of connected that, we talked about at the beginning here, this is where you'd kind of be able to see that, and you'd see a lot more engagement and different types of reports related to your app, again, from there. Again, if you don't have an app or you didn't build one or didn't connect it, that's okay. But that's essentially what we're going to kind of see here. Okay. So, and also looking at kind of the strategy with this is, again, this is going to be the same as Universal. We're using these reports and this information, even if it's from a different direction, to validate, again, see the ROI on our marketing level. And what's kind of nice is this whole platform is built for that. Again, you can still glean that information from Universal, but it's really not built for that, again, from that perspective. Also strategizing, again, using to optimize current presence in our SEO, even if it's our different pages. The screen resolution is an absolute, again, example of that, how we use that report and then go backwards and actually kind of help our users from there. And then absolutely, anytime you're looking at this data, we're discovering new things, potential new target markets, new opportunities, and things like that. That's also why I say, again, I'm going to repeat myself, is take advantage of the situation that we're able to, and that Google's essentially encouraging us right now to have both Universal and 4.0, because again, some of the reports are the same, but you'll even see that, some of the things that I was even kind of showing you here, that they're going to be displayed in a different way. And so it just gives us a different perspective. Not only do we get our feet wet and stuff like that, but you can glean different kind of insights. I'm personally kind of interested to see, again, what changes Google even makes to 4.0 with, again, because there are some still things that we all love about Universal and that are kind of cut and dry. And there's still some talk within the industry if they're going to kind of morph those a little bit more together to make it a little bit more kind of seamless. Now, of course, now time will tell, and Google's the one that gets to decide that. But, again, like that's where we get to kind of see where it kind of takes from there. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Again, this is probably our shortest workshop that we do, but since it's such a new platform, and I'll be honest, like you probably are going to be a little apprehensive once you see it, because it's so much different than Universal that it takes some time to kind of do. So we do this on purpose to kind of give you guys an intro to this. So to kind of focus on those things that we talked about, know some of the differences, but focus on some of the different types of reports that we kind of discussed. If that's screen resolution, if that's the engagement or retention, start to kind of make sure you've got your 4.0 set up and realize that, again, we're talking about a lot of the same data here. It's just either A, being collected differently or having a little bit different perspective kind of on it. But another big thing, especially if, again, you didn't set up conversions previously, again, we didn't kind of go through that. We're almost getting some of those out of the box with the way that 4.0 kind of essentially works. So I do want to open this up for kind of questions, and feel free to, again, put them in chat, or you can unmute yourself as well. But I want to, I already have one question that says, will the Google Analytics Academy certification be updated to 4.0? So the answer is yes. Unfortunately, we just don't know when. Again, like, this is why I do agree, and I'm happy that Google really did push that deadline to really be switched over to really 4.0 until next year. I thought myself, it was actually supposed to be like this spring. And as we can all imagine, some of us may not have even heard about 4.0 until now, or really kind of heard about but didn't know about it. So the short answer is yes, but unfortunately, again, like, I just don't know when that time is. Andrew, great question. Does it only track from the time you install it, or will the history of Universal be included? So, what's kind of nice about it is that there's some data that will be kind of transferred over, but a lot of the data, because it's new, will start to be as it's right there. Because again, like, there's a lot of data on how it's being tracked and what it's tracking that is completely new. So that's also why I encourage you to really kind of set this up ASAP, so that you can start looking at that, again, data. Now, you'll always have access to Universal. So even if Google, again, decides to go to 4.0, really, what's really going to happen is it would just essentially stop tracking, and that's at Google's kind of discretion. But you would still always have access to that, and it'd be in your same account where you can switch. But Andrew, I will say that's why I, again, very adamant about making sure that you get both 4.0 and Universal running right now, so that you can start tracking some of the new analytics as fast as possible. Awesome. Well, perfect. Oh, I did just get one more question. Says, Ben, so what is your favorite part or report of 4.0? So, again, I've had a few of them, again, I kind of talked about through the, the presentation, but what I will say is, I'd say there's probably 3 really big points that I love about 4.0. Again, I'm not gonna lie, I still love Universal, and again, it's even taking me a little bit after 10 years, 12 years of using Universal to kind of get to the new one. But I do love the codeless event tracking. That is really cool, and I know that's going to help a lot of small business owners. I also love the, again, we kind of go into one report like the demographics, and can more easily just switch between kind of minor things like city and language and things like that. And then my last one that I'll say that I really love about 4.0 is kind of like the engagement or retention. It's more like that focus on conversions. It's really telling us what we, again, all along have been wanting to know. And actually, I should say one big one too that I did leave out was the AI insights. That honestly is a really big one, especially for people that are new. Absolutely be looking at those AI insights, glean some of that information that Google's kind of telling you, and being able to kind of put that into there. So those would be some of the ones that I'm kind of looking forward to. Honestly, I'll probably learn some more as we go along, and as we, again, get recertified and do those types of things, as Google kind of comes up with some changes. But, again, those would be the ones that I would say. So. Awesome. Well, again, if we don't have any other questions, I just want to say I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Again, like, if you like these kind of workshops, I encourage you to check out our website at skolmarketing.com/workshops. We, of course, again, you can go back and learn more about Universal, while it's still being utilized and around, and SEO and SEM and social media and all of that kind of fun stuff. Also, want to encourage you to check out our YouTube channel, which has all of our, again, topics previously recorded for workshops that you can kind of get on demand, as well as you can see our upcoming workshop schedule if you like to catch these live at our website, of course. And then last but not least is, if you have any further questions that you didn't get an opportunity to ask me today, feel free to kind of reach out to me with my contact information there. Or if you'd like to talk about our products or services that we can offer for you, we'd be more than happy to kind of discuss that. So with that said, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you guys took at least a couple things away from 4.0 with this new kind of venture. And I hope that you guys all install it and start to kind of get your feet wet and kind of prepare for that 2023 kind of switch that Google's kind of telling us about. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Skol.